This is the CritRPG PubCrawl, where we talk with all the publishers in the progression fantasy and lit RPG space. Welcome everyone to the CritRPG PubCrawl. With me today is, I hope I don't butcher this, Caerulex? No?
Caerulex.
Caerulex. Oh,
Yes.
okay. Sorry, I was very European about it. And you are, of course, the head of publishing house Timeless Winds. Did I pronounce that right?
It's wind, not plural. A lot of people do timeless winds, and it's always very funny because I'm like, actually, there's no S. But other people say it, so then people just remember it because they see other people also saying timeless winds.
Yeah. But how did you come up with a publishing house?
So it's completely from my background playing games. So I had a character in a game called Timeless, and then I had another character in the same game that had wind as part of its name. And somewhere along the road, I was still a young human. I needed to make my first Gmail account. That is still my main Gmail account. So then it came time to make a publishing company, many years later. And we were like really brainstorming. I had my whole family there, and I'm like, guys, I'm really trying to think of a good name here. And they're just like, I don't know. But at the end of the day, we just decided to go with Timeless Wind Publishing. So I have written 2 web serials, and neither of them are complete, but one will hopefully be complete by the end of this year. But I wanted to publish my books, and I wanted to self-pub. So I looked a lot into it back in the day. So this is like 2020. I'm really looking into whether I should be self-publishing and going with publishers. It was a little bit of a different time though back then. Like Podium didn't have any of their ebooks yet. Athon was a lot smaller then. There was just not a general sense of like all these different publishers in the space that now I think a lot of authors have access to now. So again, a little bit of a different time, which is crazy because it was not that long ago. But I, again, was looking into it, and then I decided that I wanted to try self-publishing for the ebook and print. And then I decided to go with Podium for the audio, because there is more risk in audio, and I had confidence that they would do a good job. So that was kind of the start of it. So before I even made a deal with Podium, though, I'd already made my company. So I made the company at like the very end of 2020 after I decided definitely self-publishing. I'm going to do the book myself. And then in 2021, by the end of 2021, the first book of my series, The Menach Loop, came out. So that was the first actual release from Timeless Wind. And from then, we really wanted to get other projects because ultimately from the beginning, I decided to make the company, the trigger point was that I wanted to publish my own book. But the idea was, hey, if I can do this successfully and Menach went well, then I can publish other people's books successfully too. But of course, some people are like, but why would you publish other people's books? That's effort. Like, why would you choose to do that side of it? Because I think a lot of people, they actually really hate the publishing process, and they just prefer to write their manuscript, send it to a publisher, and never have to worry about it. They'll have to do edits, but they like to just keep all their focus on the actual writing side. So why am I not like that? I think for me, I really like to read, and a lot of people do, and then try to think about how I can essentially help authors whose books that I've read succeed. If I really, really like a book and I finish reading it, my first instinct is, oh my gosh, how can this person become a writer full-time so I get as many chapters as possible? Because, of course, that totally makes sense. That's oftentimes my instinct. So making this publishing company, one of the primary goals is to essentially make it so that people who sign with us can, if they want to, obviously, but can make enough to work like full-time. There's a lot that goes into that. So first and foremost, it means you have to do a good job. So there is like a lot of pressure to make sure that the books you produce are going to sell well and are going to be written in like a certain way that they are following expectations of readers in the genre. So there's definitely a lot of pressure there. You have to market it really well, just tons of stuff. And then the other pressure too is to make sure that you're giving them a royalty split that is like indicative of like the effort that they like put in, right? I think for me, when I was first considering publishers, I think generally what's considered a very good offer from ebook publishers is like 50%. That's considered like quite good. 50-50 split. And it's infinitely better than trad. Like trad is significantly lower, like traditional publishing. And then in this space for like indie books, again, 50% is considered excellent. When I was looking around, the 50% deals that now we hear people getting, those really weren't as much of a thing. It was definitely a lot more like 30% deals for people. Things have changed. It's gotten a lot more competitive. All of the podium offers, all of the Aethon offers, I think all these places, there's now more competition with like all these new people entering the space. And I just talk about podium and Aethon because they're just two of the biggest names that are most prolific. But it's really all of the publishers. I think in general, it's all gotten more competitive, which is great because it really means that for authors, you're able to make sure you don't get screwed over, so to speak. And I don't think any publisher's goal is to screw anyone over, but I think obviously if you have more choices, you're able to make a better decision that's best for you versus just taking something because you don't have any other options, even if you have reservations. But back to what I was saying about 50% is like really good, but that isn't even what I was seeing. So I think one of the things that I really wanted to do is ensure that I'm essentially treating authors how I would have been treated because I went to this and I thought, hey, what would it have taken for me to have signed with a publisher, right? Like, why would I have done that versus just self-publishing it? So that's how I approached the problem, and that led to our current royalty scheme, which is the same for all of our authors. At least for now, maybe the space moves quickly, maybe 5 years from now it'll be totally different. But so far, for all of our authors, for the ebook, it's been 70-30 splits. We have it tiered, so it's like 50-50 until we break even on expenses. So, like cover art, editing costs, like any of that. So then it's 50-50 until those costs are like recouped on our side. And then as soon as that's done, it goes to 70-30, 70 to the author. So that's how we've been doing all of our people. Audio is a little different, but it's also generous. That, again, my whole motivation here is to just make authors successful. And that's why I made this publishing company, as someone who really likes to read and who really wants people to hopefully write as many books as possible and be empowered to do that versus being forced to go back to their day job or just let this languish as a hobby. So
the struggle is very real. Absolutely.
it is very real. It's essentially full-time, but I have two jobs. So I also work doing AI machine learning engineering work. So that's my full-time job. And then this is my second job, essentially. It's definitely more than a part-time job because I do it constantly. So I really just have two full-time jobs. So I run Timeless Wind, though, with Sontag, Silas Sontag. He is co-owner with me, and he handles a lot of stuff. He handles all of the marketing. He does developmental editing. He does line editing. Usually, there's no time for him to do all of the projects, but he is in charge of all the editing. He is able to do a lot. So he's also an audio engineer. For Wish Upon the Stars, the audiobook, we did that in-house, and he did all of the audio engineering. That's what he actually went to school for, so it's perfect.
That's awesome. That's a pretty cool origin story, I guess. When did you start writing yourself?
I started writing pretty young. I think a lot of people, they're like, I don't know, I just wrote since I was in elementary school, but nothing very good at all. I'd say the first long form thing I ever wrote, actually long enough to be considered a novel or something, was freshman year of high school. It was really bad, in like a really funny way. It's like a Blue Exorcist mixed with like other things knockoff. It's like weird, like Demon Hunter Academy novel. So that was the first kind of long form thing I ever wrote. I was very proud of it when I was like 14 going on 15, but it's really not good. I wrote like shorter stuff for a while. Then I think like junior year, yeah, I think like junior and senior year of high school, I started writing a lot more things that got to like 20K words, and then I ended up dropping them. But honestly, by the time I was a junior in high school, my writing was really good. I'm just gonna be like totally honest, guys. My writing junior year was like pretty decent. If you're actually curious about, and it just people listening, what my writing was like the junior year of high school, I published a serial on Royal Road that's like completely dead, but I just wanted to put it out there because I thought it was good, and that's In Pursuit of Glory. So I wrote that, yeah, when I was like 17.
Awesome. Okay.
So writing took the back burner for a while after I entered college. And then I think sophomore year of college, yeah, it was definitely sophomore year, I started writing Apex Predator, which
Mhm.
is a web serial. It's pretty long. It's like over 1,000 pages on Railroad. It's been on hiatus for a while since like 2018. I think I've updated a few chapters since then, but I still have the goal to go back to it and finish it. But it's been hiatus. But it was a fun
I
story.
I think I understand the sentiment of you want to go back to it, but there's many reasons why people take a second to actually go back to these kind of books. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think if I went back to it, I'd have to like change it a lot. But
Mhm.
it's a fun story.
That's the issue. You always learn. It's a problem.
Say a bigger
Um,
issue. It's just you start the book, and it's one of those ones that can go on forever, but maybe
mm,
you don't want to spend
mm,
forever writing this book. So
mm. So you said that you were basically, I'm going to be hyperbolic here, a star author by the time you were in junior high.
no, not star author, but my writing was good. There's a lot that goes into being a good author that isn't writing well.
What about LitRPG was it that actually made you go like, I want to write this?
So, fun fact, I have actually never written a lit RPG except for a short story. But I know what you mean, adjacent progression
Mm,
fantasy. And why do I love lit RPG? Why
yes,
do I
yes.
publish a lot of it?
Mm,
Okay, so I think for me, yeah, it's my background in like video games. It's what I like to read. So I started playing WoW when I was in the third grade. It was vanilla WoW then, and I played a lot through the end of middle school and a little bit in high school. I think in middle school, like a third of my life, like waking life, I'm like not even joking. I did the math. It was like a third of my whole waking life was spent playing World of Warcraft, which is like a little terrifying, just a little bit. But yeah, I spent a lot of time playing WoW, and I feel like a lot of people have a similar origin story with respect to playing MMOs. I think also I read and watched a ton of anime and comics. I was reading tons of like Scanlation websites, like webtoons, back before webtoon was really like an app. A totally different
mhm,
era of consuming that kind of content, I think. Yeah, so I was just really enmeshed in that space. So I really first got into the genre of progression fantasies, the overall umbrella, in college. So it was sophomore year, and I think, what did I read? I can't remember exactly. It was like a meandering road, but Mother of Learning. Somehow I read Mother of Learning. I read Worm. Like destroyed an entire winter break. Hilariously. I read Coiling Dragon. I read Forgotten Conqueror. Like I'm just like reading all these things like sophomore year, and I'm like, ah, yes, this, this is it. And then yeah, the rest is history. It's a good genre. It's a genre that I really enjoy reading. I like to joke like why should I be a publisher? I I have extremely generic taste. The most generic possible taste you can imagine for a reader in this genre, which I like to think helps me make good decisions in the sense that like if I like something, it's probably on market. Like it's probably going to reach a lot of people who like it. Normally,
That's a
I
good
can
skill.
usually tell if something is an exception to that. There are exceptions, but I'd say there really aren't that many. I have really picky
Mhm,
tastes. And then if I don't like something, I can usually also tell if I just don't like the premise. I'm extremely
mhm.
picky about premises and tropes. and oftentimes it'll still do well. I just don't personally enjoy it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I know you signed Mammal, who writes Godclads. What other authors did you sign recently that people might know?
Recently, okay, so if you go to my website, we have all the authors listed. I keep it very up to date, the best of my ability. So I can go back into my little timeline. So around the era of signing Ostensible Mammal, we signed Ends of Magic, which I'm really excited about. That's going to be coming out this fall, Ends of Magic
Mm-hmm.
1, and I'm actually doing a polish pass through Ends of Magic 2 now. So that's
Mm.
going to go to the narrator soon. The narrator for Ends of Magic is Phil Thrawn. So we're like really excited for simultaneous release on that. After signing Godclads, which we are of course very excited for, we signed Pygilist by Harish Bardwaj, and that's a really fun one. And we actually just got the narrator on that because, of course, we're doing ebook and audio.
Mhm.
That's going to be Vicus, who's absolutely very, very, very talented. We are like extremely excited for that. Then a few more we recently signed. We're going to be doing Nowhere Stars by Anemone, and that's going to be really fun for us because we're doing that as a light novel series. So it'll
Mhm.
be shorter books, and they're all going to have interior art. So we've been working with an artist now to do a lot of really cool black and white um, images to put into that. And then
That's super interesting.
finally, we have Blood for Power with Scott James. And that's a fun one that I actually hadn't really heard of. It was on Rising at some point, but I didn't see it when it was on there. And it's like an apocalypse type situation. And I am a total sucker for System Apocalypse books. I freaking love them. I gave it a try and it was fun. So I was like, sweet. Yeah, so those are our currently upcoming projects that we haven't already actually published.
No.
Because so far, aside from me, we've done Virtuous Sons, which is super fun, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it has a lot of fan overlap with Godclads from Ostensible Mammal.
Yep.
We've done Strongbound stuff, Ghost of the Truth Seeker, which is another system apocalypse. Then we did just now Wished Upon the Stars by Malcolm Tent, and that's been doing great. But we're excited for the future. We're still actively signing authors.
Pretty cool stuff. Do you go out and approach people, or should they just approach you?
I often approach people. Fun fact, I was late to this interview because I've been really tired this week because I've been actually binging something. It's bad for my health, it's bad for my work, but alas,
High praise
yeah,
for a
it's
book, yeah.
it's really good. And I feel like nobody knows about this book. It's so weird. It's old. It's from like 2 years ago and it has over 3,000 pages. And I like never heard it mentioned anywhere. It has 1,000 followers. It's Nameless Sovereign. It's really super weird. And I'm like trying to get in touch with this author, and they're like, last time they were online was like August 8th, and I'm just like, I'm like trying to message them, and they're like not online. It's so sad. It's very tragic. So I would say if you want to be approached by publishers, make yourself available. But it's fine. But yeah, so I mean, often I'll read books, and if I love the book, I'll reach out to the author. But definitely, like authors that we've signed have approached us. So I wasn't really aware of them, or maybe I'd seen them on Rising Stars, but just hadn't really read it. But
Mm.
then they send us an email with their links to the Royal Road story and premise. Then we check out and we like it, and then yeah, and then we sign it. So both are good options. I
So
do
you,
feel bad when I say no to people because oftentimes when we say no, it's specifically because not because the writing is bad or anything, but it's just usually premise. Because the policy between me and Silas Sontag is usually if one
mm,
of us doesn't love a book, and usually that comes down to premise,
mm,
because we don't really mind doing a lot of editing if the book
mm,
is really fun and meets our tastes. So if one of us doesn't love a book, then we say no. Yeah, we just put a lot of time and
mm,
effort into every single project. I think publishers all obviously spend like a lot of time and effort, but I
mhm,
think it's there's definitely more of a personal relationship, like talking like very frequently. That I think for us to justify spending like that much time, it has to be like everyone has to be like all in, same page. Like this book is amazing. We love this book. We are so excited to publish this book. Like I want to finish reading a book and be like, yeah, like this is really fun. Like I really want to publish this. Like that's kind of how I need to feel. If I finish something, I say this is good, and I think this is going to do well. I don't know if I need to publish this.
Mm-hmm.
Is sometimes
Yeah. Okay.
how it goes, and it makes me feel bad because rejection really sucks, and I don't want people to feel like I think that their book isn't good because that's usually not what it is. It usually just comes down very specifically to taste, which is very different, I think, from a lot of other publishers, where like even if they don't personally love something, they know it'll do well in like the market and they'll sign it. And I'm not saying in the future that we might not do that, but I think for now, while we're still fairly small and growing, like the easiest way for us to filter is based on taste.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, right? So I have asked around, as I do, and the most common thing that people, sorry, I didn't mean to shock you.
No, I'm just joking. I'm
The
making exaggerated like facial gestures for those who are listening.
yeah, yeah. So one thing that all the authors I approached, 3 of them had in common, said like they signed with you because you believed in the story the most. So that makes sense. Every publisher has a lot of quirk, and that's what keeps the space so stable, I think, because it's not commercialized. It is yet. Fingers crossed, right? So every single publisher has their little thing, right?
I think that all of the publishers in this space are great. I think many authors know, but maybe not like the public know. But I'm admin of a Discord group called the Silver Pen, and so when I became admin, one of my main objectives was to try to get all of the different publishers represented there to make it easier for like authors to approach them, to be aware of all the different options in the space. At the end of the day, I think these publishers are all doing a great job getting books to market and getting authors, their audience and allowing them to make a living. Always there will be circumstances where a book just doesn't do well and that like really sucks. So like going with a publisher is never going to be a guaranteed success, right? Any publisher. But I think that the publishers that are in this space tend to do a pretty good job.
Yeah,
So
I think so too. One thing I've noticed is, I mean, you always hear them was like, "Oh, all the publishers hate each other." Like, it's completely not true. I know you guys are giving each other tips. I know you're talking to each other, and I have met a single one like bad mouth another publisher. Like,
I think it's competitive. Sometimes it could be a
yeah,
little competitive. I think,
but so
yeah,
is Monopoly.
yeah, I know
Like,
the game. I will say that I think a fun thing with the publishers is that most of us go to Dragon Con,
mm,
which is a conference that's coming up soon. So that's Labor Day weekend in the U.S., but that's
mm,
like like very end of August through like the beginning of September. So it starts like the 31st of August is I think
mm,
technically the first day, but it's like a wild time for authors and publishers in this space. A lot of people come and it's very fun and it's great for networking and talking to each other. So I think events like that where you actually put faces to people's names, you
mm,
have a drink with them, you're all talking about the same thing. You realize how passionate everyone is. Like people love these
mm.
books. They're just yeah, it's a fun group.
I'm so jealous. I want to go to DragonCon so bad, but
One
it,
day. I
yeah,
know it's hard
next
to justify the flight
next
if you're far.
next year, business expense going to DragonCon to interview people. No,
Oh, Dragon Con is 100% a business expense. Like,
absolutely it
absolutely.
is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But
Like, I'm not going there to fangirl over like
just
Travis
because it's
Baldry or
good.
anything. This year, tragically, I will be in Modena, Italy, and eating Parmesan cheese. So I just can't make it.
It's a tragedy.
Absolutely tragic. What kind of stories did surprise you in the past? So I keep this very open as a general question, so you can interpret
What
this as you want.
story surprised me in the past? I think literary fiction is more likely to surprise me because there aren't as many expectations. I don't read very much of it, and most that I do read surprises me. I will say I think some literary fiction that I really like that has surprised me is are grammar. The things they
Mm-hmm.
carried, that was really good.
Mm-hmm.
That I didn't really know what that
Mm-hmm.
was going to be going in. I really liked storytelling and the focus they had on that. I also think a book that surprised me because reading the premise, I was like, this is a book I will not like. Maybe appreciate, but not like. But somehow it was like in a car that I was in, and I just decided to start reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a short enough, or I guess you could say long enough car ride that I was able to finish it cover to cover because it's not very long. But this book was Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. And that one was really good, and it definitely surprised me because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really know what to expect. I'd say most books like in fantasy don't tend to surprise me. That's usually not like there are twists. You'd be like, oh shit, like oh big twist, but I'm not actually like, oh my gosh, I never expected him to reach the nascent soul stage. It's like, no, of course you I never expected him to get a power up. Like, heaven forbid, it's just a different type of like fiction. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's maybe why a lot of people like it though too. Like, it's not necessarily super surprising. Oh, one thing
Yeah.
that really did surprise me. So this is extremely controversial, and there are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
reasons why people don't like this, but some people do like
Mm-hmm.
this. I
Mm-hmm.
so I really liked Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. So I do not read fan fiction, but I do like rational fiction usually. And somehow I was convinced to read this, and I expected to not like it at all. And then I read it, and I had just really never read any kind of rational fan fiction before. And reading it, I was just extremely pleasantly surprised. So I was very surprised reading H.P. Moore. But you can get into why that is controversial, but I don't want to. But
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
was a surprise.
Thank you, because I would have to edit that. No. Yeah, I can. Yeah, yeah. I haven't read it before. One thing that really bothers me about writing and then also doing the podcast is don't have time to read anymore. I read a little bit before bed every night. Yeah, you're drawing tears on your face. Yeah, I very much. Yeah, I mean, you read stuff for a living.
I know it's my job, which makes it great because everything I do is my job. Almost. Like literally almost all of my time I'm working because I can include reading as part of my job. It's great.
Actually, it is, isn't it? Like it's
It
both great and
is. No,
also kind of
no, no.
depressing.
It's great. To be fair though, it's always at minimum market research.
Hmm.
Like, if you're reading a book that's already published.
Yeah,
Anything on Royal Road though, for the most part, doubles as like acquisitions and market research though, technically.
yes,
I think
absolutely.
some obviously don't if it's a book that I know has absolutely no intention of signing with anyone or like
Mm.
whatever, but yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, okay, that's pretty okay. All right. So, is there anything you want authors to know?
I'd say I don't know if this is what I want authors to know, it's more what I want authors to do. I want
Yeah.
authors to just keep other authors in the loop, right? Because I feel like there are just so many authors who are not plugged in to communities and spaces that essentially tell them how to be successful or be happy. Again, we have spaces like the Discord server, the Silver Pen that I'm
Mm.
involved in that have tons of resources for authors and I think can help people a lot in making informed decisions. I think that the one thing I often fear for authors is them not making informed decisions because they just don't know anything. So,
Mm.
like, as an example, an extreme example that most people I talk to don't personally have problems with, but web novel, the website,
Mhm.
you have people who signed a contract with Web Novel because they started posting their story there, and it's the first offer they ever get for their book for money. And for people who don't know, Web Novel is an extremely predatory website that generally offers very poor remuneration compared to how much time people work to write their stories. And in their contracts, they include clauses that say that they own the IP. So if the author were to stop writing the story, then they would have the right
Mhm.
to have someone finish it for them. So they no
Mhm.
longer own the story anymore. So these are all things that are considered very, very bad. Um, and again, people just don't make a lot of money off of a web novel
Yeah.
generally. So it's just pretty objectively bad. There's no other way to put it. People are told frequently, do not accept web novel contracts on Reddit, on Discord, and many, many spaces. But if authors are just not plugged in, they're like not on social media, they do not talk to other authors, um, they can make the decision to do that just not knowing their other options.
Yeah.
So my one ask to authors is just be kind and be like open. Don't hoard information
Mm.
saying, "Oh no, this is secret information. Like, this is giving me a leg up on the competition." Like, don't be like that. Like, share as much
It's
information
no
as you
competition, my
can.
dude.
Rising tide lifts all boats, right? But yeah, share information, please. Help people. Be kind. All these
Yeah.
things that people can do in the world.
If you're listening to this in the year 2037 on your Elon Musk powered brain implant, this was a time when lit RPG was still a small genre, and there weren't any He Who Fights with Monsters movies that have been stretched out for like 16 movies. So, just saying, this used to be a different space, and I actually like it because it is so small-ish. It feels like a village, for good and for bad. But yeah, I personally
I agree.
like the space. I like writing here. I like talking to people here. Obviously, this is why I do the podcast. Do you have any shout-outs?
So, obvious shout outs are the books that we've released this year because I love all of them. It's really awkward usually when I recommend books that I published because there's a reason I published it, right? Oftentimes I was a big fan and then I published the book. So, for instance,
Mhm.
Godclads, whenever I rec Godclads, now I'm like, is this a conflict of interest? It is, but also, I genuinely recommend it, and I would recommend it if I wasn't the one publishing it. So that's what I
How is that?
tell myself to sleep.
There is no conflict of interest here? You are the publisher.
There
You
is,
promote
but
the
at least
book,
I tell myself that it's like the litmus test of like, would I still be recommending this book all over if I wasn't the publisher? And if the answer
and would you?
is like yes, it should always be yes, technically. Then like yeah, I tell myself
Yeah. Okay.
it's
Yeah, it's a good litmus for you because if it's not, then what are you doing?
exactly. But yeah, so I mean, shout outs for books we released recently. We had the sequel to Virtuous Sons, The Tyrant
Mhm.
Riot, which is book two. So that came out in the spring. And then in the summer, we had the sequel to Ghost of the Truth Seeker come out. So that's book two. And then we just had Wish Upon the Stars, book one release.
Mhm.
So upcoming, we have Ends of Magic, which is super fun. That's coming in the fall, I believe in October. And then we have Godclads, which we're hoping to do by the end of the year. And then we
Mhm.
also have Pygilist, Scorched Earth, which is book one of that. That's coming by the end of the year as well. So shout out to all those. Shout outs to things I've been reading lately and really, really enjoying. I have been obsessed with Super Supportive. It's like so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Would 1000% publish. I feel like everybody would publish it though, because it's like so phenomenal. So surprise, surprise. But yeah, I'm actually a patient of that one. It's really good.
If Sliker ever opens his PMs, there's going to be a bloodbath. I swear, because everyone wants to
I
publish
know
this thing.
it. Oh my god, I actually feel bad for like Slate guys. It'll probably be like crazy. But I mean, at least for them, they don't really need to publish it though if they're happy just with Amazon. Excuse me, with Patreon, because they make like really good money from Patreon alone. So who knows what
And
they'll
it's,
do?
yeah, Sliker, if you listen to this, I sent you a PM. I want you on the show.
Of course, they have like a Discord server, but it's a fan made one that I
Mhm.
don't believe they participate in. Which is again, it's an interesting way to have that separation
Yeah,
between the author and their personal life, which I can completely respect. Okay, quickly,
absolutely.
other things that I've really enjoyed lately. Unintended Cultivator is fantastic. Speedwriting the Multiverse, book 1 recently came out on Amazon, and that's a fun series. I'm like pretty excited for Silver Seeker's release because I enjoyed that on Railroad. I really like Dragon Sorcerer. That one's pretty fun. And that book 2 recently came out, and that's by Sean Oswald. Sean's great. Arcane Cultivator by Harmon Cooper. I'm also excited for that release. Harmon's really great. There are definitely like a lot of people who have been like really fun. Like I met Harmon at DragonCon last year, and since then we've like talked a lot. I was able to visit him in New Haven, which was fun. There are a lot of cool authors. Like it was great meeting Matt Dinneman at DragonCon, and I am beyond stoked for Dungeon Crawler Carl audiobook coming out on September 1st.
Yeah.
Like literally, I cannot wait. The
Yeah,
Eye
they
of
got
the Bedlam
pretty cool shit.
Bride.
Thank you so
Great. Well,
much.
thank you so much for having me. It was fun. You're a very fun person to talk to.
Oh,
You're a great interviewer. So
well,
thank you
thank
for
you.
having me.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, thank you. We could keep going for hours.
Well, it went over the
Ooh.
time that you had planned, so thank you.